What did James Middleton, Kate's brother, reveal about Prince William that left royal enthusiasts heartbroken? For years, the world saw Prince William as the composed heir to the British throne, the strong, steady figure raised under the weight of duty, responsibility, and the legacy of his late mother, Princess Diana. But when James Middleton finally stepped forward to speak, not just as a businessman, not even as Kate's brother, but as someone who had witnessed William's most vulnerable moments, what he revealed tore through the polished image with raw truth. The royal facade, carefully maintained for decades, faltered in the face of something deeply human. James didn't offer tabloid gossip. He offered an intimate, heartfelt truth, a truth that showed William not just as a prince, but as a man who had silently carried pain, pressure, and private fears no one outside the royal walls ever truly understood. And the way James shared it quietly, respectfully, but with unmistakable sincerity, made the world pause. Because beneath the palace protocol and royal duties, here was a brother-in-law witnessing something fragile in one of the most powerful men in the world. The public reaction was immediate and divided. Some were deeply moved, others were stunned, and critics quickly questioned whether such truths belonged in the public domain. But what was undeniable was the emotional weight of James's words. For royal watchers, it wasn't just a revelation, it was a shift in perception. The seemingly impenetrable wall surrounding Prince William cracked just a little. And for the first time, many saw what had always been there. A man trying to be everything for everyone, while keeping pieces of himself hidden away. James's words weren't dramatic. They weren't meant to expose. They were personal. And that's what made them land with such force. His account offered more than just insight into William's character. It sparked questions about the toll of royalty, the emotional cost of carrying a nation's expectations, and the importance of genuine human support behind closed doors. In doing so, James drew back the curtain not just on his brother-in-law, but on the delicate threads that tie the Middleton and Windsor families together. Threads woven through shared holidays, whispered conversations, grief, and resilience. Threads that, when tugged, unravel not scandals, but truths. This documentary doesn't chase controversy. It chases clarity. Through James's eyes, we see William differently, not as a monarch in waiting, but as a brother, a son, a friend, and at times, a man quietly struggling beneath the weight of history. As we trace the path from revelation to understanding, we uncover not just what was said, but why it matters, and what it means not only for the monarchy, but for every person who's ever been expected to be strong while silently carrying heartbreak. To understand the depth of James's revelations, we must first delve into the Middleton family's world. Who are the Middletons, and how did their close-knit family values influence Kate and her relationship with William? To understand the full weight of James Middleton's revelation and why it carried such heartbreaking truth, we must first look into the world he came from. The Middletons were never royal. They were never meant to be royal. But what they had, what Carol and Michael built, was a household shaped by love, humility, and fierce loyalty. It wasn't privilege that made their home powerful. It was presence. The kind of presence that keeps a family bound together, even when the world outside is cold, brutal, and unforgiving. In that house, children weren't raised to serve a nation, they were raised to serve each other. That difference, subtle yet seismic, would later ripple across the walls of Buckingham Palace itself. Carol Middleton, the daughter of a builder and a self-made entrepreneur, knew what it meant to fight for every step forward. And Michael, calm and soft-spoken, grounded the family with a quiet strength that rarely needed to speak above a whisper. Together, they didn't just raise 3 children, they raised a unit. Kate, the composed eldest, Pippa, the lively middle, and James, the thoughtful youngest. But beneath their public smiles lay a private discipline, one founded not in protocol, but in presence. Birthday dinners, dog walks, tearful hugs in the kitchen, they weren't acts of show. They were rituals of love, and they left an imprint on Kate that not even the weight of the crown could erase. Unity wasn't a slogan for the Middletons, it was a lifestyle. They didn't fracture under pressure. They locked arms. Carol didn't just prepare her daughter for royal life. She prepared her to survive it. And James, often underestimated by the public eye, absorbed these values with the same intensity. He watched how his parents nurtured without controlling, how they let mistakes be made, but never let them define the person. He witnessed a family dynamic where silence didn't hide secrets, but gave space for understanding. And when Kate entered William's world, a world where silence often meant avoidance, those contrasts hit harder than anyone realized. Because the royal family, for all its tradition, rarely offered warmth in the way the Middletons did. Where Kate came from a home that protected emotion, William came from one that buried it. That difference became both a strength in their union and a quiet source of tension. The Middletons gave William something he'd long been missing: a window into what family could look like without the shadows of legacy clouding every conversation. It was simple, but it was powerful. And as William stepped deeper into the Middleton home, he didn't just meet in-laws, he met a version of life that felt like a refuge. James saw this too. He saw how his brother-in-law softened in their home, how his laughter came easier, how he stood just a little taller, not because of duty, but because he felt safe. These weren't changes a crown could demand. These were shifts born from trust, from dinners without press, from conversations that didn't end with headlines. And as William slowly blended into the fabric of their family, James watched with both admiration and concern. Because when you know someone is finally breathing, you also start worrying about the moment they'll have to hold their breath again. With this foundation, let's explore how Prince William integrated into the Middleton family. How did Prince William adapt to the Middleton family's traditions and lifestyle? For a man born into an institution defined by protocol, precision, and generational weight, stepping into the Middleton household was like landing on another planet. Gone were the cold corridors of palaces filled with silent footmen and unspoken rules. At the Middletons, the kitchen buzzed with laughter. Conversations overlapped without consequence, and no one was too important to clear the table. It wasn't just different, it was human. And for Prince William, who had grown up with formality masquerading as affection, it was both disarming and disorienting. The first time he visited their family home in Bucklebury, Berkshire, he wasn't Prince William, heir to the throne. He was simply William. And that, in itself, was the beginning of something transformative. There were no curtsies, no meticulously curated public appearances, no palace aides lingering in the next room. Just a dining table, a warm fire, and Carol's insistence that he help set the plates. The adjustment didn't come easily. Years of royal conditioning don't unravel in a weekend. But over time, William began to shed his stiffness. He leaned into the comfort he had never known he needed. He joined in on their quirky holiday traditions. He sat through family games that carried no political weight, but immense emotional meaning. And slowly, his guard came down not in moments of grand transformation, but in small, ordinary exchanges. A shared joke with Michael. A sibling squabble between Kate and James that reminded him of the brotherhood he missed. It was in these little acts that William discovered a version of family untouched by cameras or legacy. And for a man raised to wear a mask, the chance to remove it, even briefly, was nothing short of sacred. But it wasn't just that the Middletons accepted William, it was how they respected him without worshiping him. They didn't try to change him. They didn't try to impress him. They simply included him. And that inclusion was powerful. It gave William the rare gift of invisibility, the chance to exist without expectation. In return, he gave them trust, something he had been taught to withhold, even from those closest to him. Carol treated him like a son, but never forgot he was someone else's child. 2. Someone who had been deeply wounded by loss and the weight of monarchy. James, especially, noticed the shift. He saw how his brother-in-law started to smile differently. Not the polished, photo-ready grin the public had memorized, but the unguarded kind that snuck out during moments of real connection. He watched how William began to pick up on their rhythms, when to jump into a conversation, when to sit in silence, when to speak from the heart without fear of a leak to the press. The contrast was striking, and James, quiet but observant, stored those moments away, sensing even then that they would one day matter. Because as William became part of the family, a unique bond formed between him and James Middleton. What kind of relationship developed between Prince William and his brother-in-law, James Middleton? From the beginning, there was something effortless about the way Prince William and James Middleton connected. It wasn't forced or ceremonial. There were no obligations, no scripted greetings. Just two men both shaped by very different worlds, finding common ground in the quiet spaces between chaos. William, burdened by duty and the weight of lineage. James, shaped by entrepreneurial spirit and a quiet longing to step out of his sister's royal shadow. Yet what grew between them wasn't rivalry or discomfort. It was trust, an unspoken bond that slowly deepened, not because they tried, but because they didn't have to. They shared more than people realized. Both were fiercely protective of Kate. Both had a love for the outdoors, animals, and the kind of grounding simplicity that neither Buckingham Palace nor the media could corrupt. William admired James's calm presence, the way he didn't chase cameras or court attention, but always stood firm behind his family. And James, in turn, saw a side of William the world rarely did: a man who laughed from the belly, who listened without judgment, and who, in moments away from royal expectation, longed to be nothing more than a good husband, a good brother, a CEO, a good man. But it wasn't just the shared hobbies or dinner table banter that forged their connection. It was the vulnerable spaces in between. When William needed a place to exhale, it was James who often provided the silence. When James struggled with his own inner turmoil battles that would later come to define his public confessions, it was William who listened, without palace filters, without judgment. These were not moments for photographers or press releases. These were the kinds of moments that only happen when formality drops and family takes its place. There were moments that sealed their bond in ways neither could predict. Long walks through fields where few recognized the man beside James as royalty. Phone calls that began with casual updates and ended with long pauses filled with understanding. And celebrations, birthdays, weddings, anniversaries where William wasn't His Royal Highness, but simply Will, clapping his brother-in-law on the back and laughing like any other member of a tight-knit family. It was in these spaces that their connection deepened, not through grand gestures, but through the kind of loyalty that doesn't need to be announced. For James, William was more than Kate's husband. He was someone who understood pressure, who carried public expectation on his shoulders, but never let it make him cruel or distant. That mattered. It made James admire him more, not as a prince, but as a man who had every reason to retreat behind a wall and didn't. In that admiration, James found a kinship that stretched beyond titles. It became a bond built not on blood, but on shared understanding of pain, of duty, of the price of being perceived but never truly known. However, beneath these warm relations, James faced personal challenges that would later intertwine with his view of William. How did a cocker spaniel named Ella play a pivotal role in the lives of James Middleton and Prince William? In a family known for discretion, the most honest moments often came from those who couldn't speak. Ella wasn't just a dog. She was James Middleton's lifeline, his confidant, his quiet savior during the years when the world praised his sister and overlooked his pain. Long before the public knew the depths of James's mental health struggles, Ella knew. She felt them. She carried them. And when the weight of comparison, of invisibility, of internal torment became unbearable, it was Ella who pulled him back to the surface. Not with words, but with presence. Unwavering, unconditional presence. James had always seemed composed, a supportive brother, a successful entrepreneur, a man of charm and elegance. But behind that image was a storm he couldn't always explain. Depression crept in like a shadow he couldn't outrun. Some days, even forming a sentence felt like climbing a mountain. The world celebrated Kate's grace under pressure, William's sense of duty, Pippa's style. James, he was often just a name in the background, but Ella saw the pain they missed. She lay beside him when he couldn't rise from bed. She nudged him forward when his spirit was on the verge of breaking. She didn't need to understand the headlines. She understood him. Ella became more than a dog. She was the one who bore witness to the darkest days and helped James survive them. So when James eventually opened up about his mental health, he didn't begin with statistics or statements. He began with Ella. She was the bridge between his silence and his healing. And what made this even more profound was how she opened a door for connection, not just with James's family, but with Prince William himself, because William too understood what it meant to grieve without words, to carry pain under the weight of expectation. He too had lost his footing in life's darkest corners. And so, through Ella, a conversation began. There were days when William would visit and find James sitting quietly in the garden, Ella by his side. He never pried, he never lectured, he simply sat. Sometimes they spoke about dogs, sometimes about nothing at all. But slowly, a bond formed anchored not in titles or duty, but in shared understanding. It wasn't just the love for animals that brought them together. It was the recognition of struggle in each other's eyes. Ella became a silent witness to their conversations, a thread stitching their moments together. The royal prince and the forgotten brother-in-law connected not by the crown, but by compassion. That cocker spaniel did something the monarchy never could. She brought two men, both quietly suffering in different ways, into the same emotional space. She reminded them that love doesn't need translation, that loyalty isn't announced, it's lived. And as James found his voice again, he often spoke through stories of Ella, of her patience, her instinct, her presence. And in every one of those stories, there was William listening, relating, offering quiet support in return. Because sometimes, the smallest souls leave the deepest marks. Ella's story leads us to the heart of James's revelations about William. What did James Middleton disclose about Prince William that touched hearts worldwide? It wasn't a press conference. It wasn't a tell-all interview. It was a quiet moment, shared in the context of reflection, a moment that shattered expectations and peeled away years of royal mystique. James Middleton, a man known for his discretion, finally opened up about something that had weighed on him for years. And it wasn't about himself. It was about William, the prince, the brother-in-law, the man who, behind the polished exterior and rehearsed composure, had been quietly bleeding under the pressure of a life not fully his own. James didn't reveal scandal. He revealed pain. The kind of pain people miss when they assume a crown protects the soul beneath it. James spoke of moments when William, surrounded by crowds and cameras, looked like he was present but wasn't. How his eyes, though trained to project calm, sometimes betrayed a flicker of emotional fatigue. He recalled how William, even in private family settings, occasionally drifted into silence, lost in thought. And he spoke, with almost unbearable tenderness, about how his brother-in-law, this symbol of national strength, had never truly recovered from the deep wounds of his youth. The trauma of losing a mother, the burden of leading a future he didn't choose, and the constant, unrelenting judgment from a public that adored him but never really knew him. According to James, William never complained. He carried it all with stoic dignity, but that dignity came at a cost. The prince had learned to bury emotions so deeply, it took extraordinary moments for it to resurface. James remembered how even small family joys, laughter during a casual dinner, a quiet moment in the countryside, were sometimes followed by a sudden stillness in William, like he was trying to hold on to the peace before the world came knocking again. James saw it, and he felt it. Because no matter how different their lives were, suffering recognizes suffering. What made James's revelation so heartbreaking wasn't just what he said, it was how he said it, without drama, without embellishment. Just the raw, vulnerable truth of a man watching another man crumble silently under the weight of responsibility. He admired William's strength, yes, but he mourned the toll it had taken. He mourned the moments William could never reclaim the privacy, the unguarded grief, the ability to be simply human without fear of judgment or political consequence. And for those listening, it struck a nerve, because it was a reminder that behind every royal photo, every wave from a balcony, every perfect speech, there was a heartbeat, often bruised, often burdened, but still beating for the country he was born to serve. James didn't offer this revelation to gain attention. He offered it because sometimes truth is the most respectful gift you can give someone who has been forced to live behind a mask. And in doing so, he gave the world a new lens through which to see William not as a flawless figure, but as a man who had survived more than he ever showed. Understanding this truth prompts a reflection on the broader implications for the royal family. How do the pressures of royal life affect mental health? And what steps are being taken to address this? For centuries, the monarchy has thrived on the illusion of unshakable strength. Royals do not break. They do not cry in public. They do not falter under pressure. But the truth, long buried under layers of tradition and tabloid myth, is far more fragile and far more human. Behind every royal wave and duty-bound smile lies a dangerous reality: the emotional toll of living a life that is never fully your own. And Prince William, like many in his family before him, has shouldered that toll in silence. But in recent years, the silence has been cracked open, and what's emerged is a deeper, more urgent understanding of what it truly costs to be royal. James Middleton's revelation didn't exist in a vacuum. It pulled back the curtain on something the palace could no longer ignore. Mental health struggles don't discriminate. They aren't softened by titles or eased by wealth. If anything, they're worsened by isolation, scrutiny, and the crushing expectation to appear invincible. William knows this all too well. The loss of his mother left wounds that never fully closed, and for years, he was expected to move forward as though tragedy hadn't altered the course of his entire being. But grief doesn't bend to protocol. Trauma doesn't wait for royal convenience. It lingers, it erodes, and it isolates. In recent years, both William and Kate have made bold strides in addressing this head-on. Their work with mental health initiatives like the Heads Together campaign wasn't born from political strategy. It was born from lived experience, from knowing what it means to suffer quietly and to watch loved ones struggle behind closed palace doors. William has spoken openly about the psychological weight of his role, the pain of bottling emotion, and the importance of breaking the generational cycle of silence. And Kate, with her own family's grounding influence, has become a fierce advocate for children's mental health, pushing for early intervention and support systems that never existed when she was growing up. But advocacy is only the beginning. What's most vital is the example they've chosen to set. A prince and princess willing to speak about therapy, about sadness, about the cost of duty. That's not weakness, that's revolution within an institution built on secrecy. And it's a shift that could define their legacy. The royal family, long known for burying its pain beneath polished surfaces, is now being led by two individuals who understand that vulnerability is not a threat to the crown. It's a protection of the soul beneath it. Yet even as progress is made, the struggle remains. William still walks a tightrope between expectation and emotion. And the palace, while evolving, is not immune to regression. There are still whispers, still doubts, still pressure to conform to a system that demands perfection in exchange for privilege. But if there's one truth that James Middleton's words have reinforced, it's this: no crown is worth wearing if it silences the person beneath it. And if William is to truly lead a modern monarchy, he must continue to speak and live with that truth. As we conclude, let's reflect on the enduring bond between the Middletons and Prince William. What can we learn from the Middleton-Windsor relationship about love, support, and resilience? In a world where power often overshadows humanity, where image takes precedence over emotion, the relationship between the Middletons and the Windsors offers something rare. A quiet reminder that behind every throne is a person, and behind every crown, a heart that still bleeds. The journey we've traced through laughter, loss, brotherhood, and revelation isn't just about royals or commoners. It's about the enduring strength of family in its purest form. Not perfect, not polished, but profoundly protective. The Middletons never sought the spotlight, yet their impact is undeniable. They became more than in-laws. They became a sanctuary. They provided Prince William with something no institution could offer: a sense of emotional safety. Not just love, but love without condition. In their home, he wasn't a monarch in waiting. He was a son-in-law, a brother, a man allowed to exhale. And in that space, something transformative happened. William didn't just survive the pressure, he softened beneath it. Because for the first time, perhaps since he was a boy walking behind his mother's coffin, he felt surrounded by people who saw the man before the title, who offered hands, not headlines, and who never asked him to perform his pain. James Middleton's heartfelt revelations weren't designed to fracture royal mystique. They were meant to remind us that healing often begins in the quiet corners of real connection. That empathy is more powerful than protocol. That sometimes the strongest thing you can do for someone carrying the weight of an entire nation is simply to sit with them and listen. James didn't expose a weakness in William. He revealed a strength. The strength to be vulnerable, the courage to carry on, and the grace to allow others to see it. As the monarchy moves forward, caught between centuries of tradition and the growing demand for transparency, it will be tested in ways it has never known. But perhaps the path forward isn't through reinvention. Perhaps it's through reclamation. Reclaiming the humanity that so often gets buried beneath lineage. Reclaiming the ability to feel openly, to admit when the burden is too great, and to trust that vulnerability does not diminish power, it redefines it. The Middletons showed that love doesn't need a title, that support doesn't require status, and that resilience, real resilience, is born from presence, not performance. What began as a glimpse into the private bond between two families has become a blueprint for something larger, a new kind of royalty, one that leads with empathy, connects through emotion, and heals through honesty. James Middleton's heartfelt revelations not only shed light on Prince William's humanity, but also inspire a broader conversation about compassion, support, and the strength found in family connections.